Middle East. A series of attacks on U.S. allies shows the reach of Iran-aligned militias. This on the second anniversary of America's killing of General Qasem Soleimani. Yemen's Houthi rebels seizing a ship in the Red Sea, armed drones targeted Baghdad's international airport, and hackers hit 2 Israeli newspapers yesterday. All 3 attacks coinciding with a massive memorial in Tehran for Soleimani. Joining me now, Fox News senior strategic analyst, General Jack Keane. General, what do you make of these attacks, and where do we go from here?
Well, first of all, I mean, clearly this is all about Qasem Soleimani and the iconic figure that he is inside Iran. I mean, when he was alive, he was likely the second most powerful leader in Iran, next to the supreme leader, and who he had a personal and professional relationship. He only had one boss, and that was the supreme leader. And he built the entire Iranian proxy infrastructure, which has been so successful in advancing their goals in the Middle East through multiple decades. So that's who he represented. Frankly, you know, when we killed Qasem Soleimani, some called it recklessly dangerous, that could lead to an escalation of war, etc. And it literally shut the Iranians down, who were at the time walking up the ladder of escalation. They came back with a measured attack. I think this is a very measured attack. 2 drones, Baghdad airport, not rockets and missiles, seized a ship in the Red Sea near the Bab el-Mandab Strait, didn't blow the ship up. A non-kinetic attack against the Israelis. They know full well the kinetic attack would get a significant response. I am disappointed with the Biden administration here fundamentally, because we had Iran on its heels after the killing of Qasem Soleimani in January of 2020. And with the maximum pressure campaign, they were just waiting out to see if Trump was going to be reelected or not before they would come to the negotiating table. They wanted those sanctions removed. The Biden administration came in, and what did they do? They stopped enforcing the maximum pressure campaign that Trump put in place. Not well known to the American people, but it is an incredibly poor decision on their part. And it immediately showed the Iranians what? Well, appeasement again, accommodation, which is something we had under the Obama-Biden administration. So here we are in these negotiations in Vienna, and we're facing the same situation we did back in 2015 and 2014. We have an administration that wants a deal at any expense. That's the way it's been in the past. And I think we're going to come out of this with a worse deal than what we had in 2015, which was highly criticized and certainly rejected by the Arab nations in the Middle East.
And we have an Iran that's being enriched by Biden's anti-energy policy here in the United States. We look at oil surging, production here in the United States falling, Biden going to war with our own producers. We were the swing producer in the world, where we controlled because we had the excess production, the most excess production capacity in the world, spare capacity. And Biden and his cronies took a hammer, a hatchet, a chainsaw to our energy production, enriching Iran. And that is their source of financial strength, is oil.
Yeah, well, the fact is that China is buying Iranian oil on a regular basis. The United States is fully aware of it, and we're not shutting it down. And we absolutely should be doing all of that and really closing the loopholes that do exist in Iran as it pertains to their economy. Listen, they certainly want these sanctions lifted. They know that's still an obstacle, an impediment for them in terms of their growth and development. But they're taking a much harder view here with this administration, because I think their experience tells them you push hard with this administration and you're likely to get concessions. And I think that's kind of where we are in Vienna right now.
Right, and by driving up the price of oil, Biden and company are enriching and empowering nations that hate us, that want to wipe us off the map. Meantime, leaders in Finland, generals say they will decide whether to join NATO despite warnings from Russia. as the military standoff at the Ukraine border continues. In negotiations, Putin has demanded security guarantees from the United States and its allies that Ukraine and other former Soviet nations will not be allowed to become NATO members. This comes as President Biden spoke by phone with Ukraine President Zelensky on Sunday. The White House said it made it clear that the U.S. and its allies would respond decisively if Russia further invades Ukraine. General King, U.S. and Russian officials will meet in Geneva next week to discuss the crisis and the security guarantees Putin is looking for. Your view of what's happening here?
Well, Vladimir Putin clearly sees an opportunity here. He's using the demonstration of 110,000 troops on the border of Ukraine in his mind to get concessions from the United States and also from the European leaders. I think he sees quite clearly the political and social division that exists in Europe and in the United States, and he reads the leadership in the White House and also the leadership, particularly in Germany and France, as being weak and prone to give in to concessions as opposed to standing up against Russia. I think that's the hand he is playing right now. He's going to meet also prior to the NATO meeting that's taken place with the United States and Russia on the 10th of January. He's going to meet with France and Germany and Ukraine, and he's clearly doing that to divide the European leadership and the American leadership. It's a fact, and we know that Germany takes a soft approach when it comes to Russia. That's why the Nord Stream pipeline 2 actually exists. And now we have a chancellor who's left of Angela Merkel, who cut the Nord Stream pipeline deal, and France takes a softer view of Russia as well. And Putin is, listen, people think he's reckless. He's not. He's a strategist. He's calculated. He's deliberate. He does detailed planning and preparation before he makes his moves. And he is moving now because he believes there's weakness there, and that presents opportunity for him. He can always fall back and do some kind of limited invasion if he has to, but he clearly would like to avoid that. And he fundamentally thinks he's going to get something out of this, and he'll keep pushing until he does.
General Jack Keane, always a pleasure. Always terrific to see you, sir. Thank you so much for being here. Have a very happy new year. We'll see you a bunch, I hope.